Hi everybody, welcome back. We are still on week 3 looking at evidence-based medicine, and today we're going to look at our second pillar of lifestyle medicine, which is physical activity. So I chose kind of an interesting article for today to look at, and once again we'll kind of discuss the article, the population, and really what the major kind of interventions are. Then we'll take a look at some of the facts and figures from the article, and we'll look at the results as well as some limitations. So today the article is going to be about physical activity, and we'll look at this this article here that was published. It's called "The Timing of Activity After Eating Affects the Glycemic Response of Healthy Adults, a Randomized Control Trial." So glycemic response has to do with your blood sugar readings after eating a meal. So the population, so this study takes a look at 78 healthy adults. The intervention is light physical activity, which is cycling on a stationary bike, initiated at 2 different times after carbohydrate ingestion. So 15 minutes and 45 minutes post-meal. Comparison, no physical activity during the same postprandial period, and the outcome is going to be postprandial blood glucose levels measured at various points after the meal. So basically, we'll take a look at this image here. This image is going to kind of show us how the study subjects are grouped. So we start at the very top, enrollment. So actually 98 people enrolled in this study, but for some reason 20 were excluded. Looks like they either declined to participate or they didn't meet certain inclusion criteria. So there were 78 people in the study, and they were then split into 2 different groups. So one of those groups was the group that participated in the stationary bike cycling 15 minutes after consuming the carbohydrate-rich meal, and then the other group was one that was allocated to begin the activity on a stationary bike at 45 minutes after consuming a carbohydrate-rich meal. Each of these 2 groups then completed the study with the physical activity indicated at their respective times, and they also completed the study at a different day without any type of physical activity, and they had their blood glucose then checked at various points after eating. So that's kind of how the study was set up. Let's see if we can look at some of the results. So we're looking at 2 different charts. The chart on the left is of the group where physical activity was initiated 15 minutes after the carbohydrate load, and the graph on the right was the group where physical activity was initiated at 45 minutes after the carbohydrate-rich meal. And then the lines on the graph represent the blood sugar over the course of time. So time is going to be on the x-axis, and blood sugar or blood glucose is going to be on the y-axis. So let's take a look at the graph on the left. So the solid line is the sedentary group, which are the same exact individuals who completed the physical activity 15 minutes after the meal, but it was just on a separate day and time that they underwent each of the 2 interventions. So we can see that these lines really closely correlate each other, essentially saying that physical activity initiated 15 minutes after mealtime really did not affect the blood glucose readings of these individuals really at all versus sedentary behavior. So it really didn't make much of a difference. As we can see, these lines are basically right on top of each other. There was no statistical significance in that group. Let's look at the chart on the right, which was physical activity at 45 minutes after mealtime. And we can see the kind of horizontal line at the 45-minute marker kind of correlates with the peak of blood sugar, where the chart on the left, 15 minutes, was kind of right before blood sugar started rising after the mealtime. So the chart on the right, the 2 lines, the sedentary line, the solid line, and the 45-minute time initiation of physical activity, they correlate with each other for the first 45 minutes pretty well, because that makes a lot of sense. Both of those groups up until that time had not been doing any physical activity. And then once we hit that 45-minute mark, the dashed line really falls off pretty rapidly. And this indicates that at that 45-minute mark, when these individuals started to do their really, kind of light physical activity, riding on a stationary bike, their blood glucose actually dropped pretty quickly to reach kind of a steady or baseline level. And this was actually statistically significant. So, what does this actually mean? This means that initiating light physical activity at peak of postprandial blood glucose level, so that was about 45 minutes after eating, resulted in a more pronounced reduction in blood glucose levels compared to activity started earlier, 15 minutes post-meal. So this is really kind of an important factor because the postprandial glucose, especially in diabetics or people where their blood sugar is not naturally very well controlled by their own body, postprandial physical activity can be a really, really great way to kind of stave off these dangerously high blood glucose spikes. So being able to reduce our postprandial blood glucose and having a kind of a good timing and a more efficient way to do it at 45 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes can be really a great kind of a great piece of information to give to our diabetic patients. However, kind of the limitation of this study is that the participants were all healthy young adults, so they were not diabetics. They were not people who naturally have kind of an adequate hormonal response to elevated blood sugar. So that's a pretty major limitation of this study. It also didn't measure any postprandial insulin levels. So insulin is the hormone that our body produces in response to elevated blood glucose that tells our body, hey, we need to get this sugar out of the bloodstream and into the cells so the cells can use it. And elevated sugar in the bloodstream is the cause of so many of the complications of diabetes. So very interesting study. Maybe next time you have a meal and you want to go for a light walk, or if you have a stationary bike at home, hop on your stationary bike for 10 minutes. Give it a try 45 minutes after your meal. It actually tends to be better at regulating our blood sugar than 15 minutes post-meal. So interesting study. I hope you guys enjoy. Tomorrow we'll take a look at an article about yoga and meditation and the inflammatory markers associated with stress. So I hope you enjoyed today. I will see you tomorrow.